Our topic today is formative assessment for multilingual learners. This is our introductory webinar to our topic, and you see who our presenters are. It's me, Diane Staehr Fenner, Meghan Gregoire-smith, and Tan Huynh. So we'll just quickly introduce ourselves. I'm Diane Staehr Fenner. I'm the president of Support Ed. I'm a former English language development teacher, dual language assessment teacher, and ESOL assessment specialist. And I'm based in Fairfax, Virginia, right outside of DC.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Meghan Gregoire-smith. I'm a multilingual learner coach with Support Ed, and I've been working in the field of multilingual learner education for about 18 years now. I began as an English language development teacher in Maryland and then joined Support Ed in 2021. I saw some people from Maryland in the chat, so welcome. I'm so excited to be here with you all this afternoon.
So hi everybody, my name is Tan Huynh. It is a lovely 3 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday where I live in Cambodia, and I am from Philadelphia. I see a lot of people from the PA area, and I teach middle school English because I'm a middle schooler and I'm still learning English. It's lovely to be here with you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Yeah, you can connect with us on LinkedIn. So this is our Support Ed team. We were all together over the summer, so you can see our growing team here. So we're a woman-owned small business. We're physically based in Fairfax, Virginia. And so we provide professional learning, like you see here today, a very abbreviated version, coaching of teachers and technical assistance to districts and states, all to empower and support multilingual learners. So we are very happy to be sharing this webinar with you today. So here are some of our books to empower educators of multilingual learners. And we're going to be drawing from Unlocking Multilingual Learners' Potential, kind of the teal book that you see here. And we just want to thank you so much for joining us, taking time out of your busy day to be with us. A special thanks to Tan, where it is 3:04 a.m. your time. So yeah, Tan went to bed, woke up, and might get back to sleep or might not be before he has to teach tomorrow. So thank you so much for joining us as well. And we wanted to give a little heads up that this is our first of 2 professional learning sessions on this topic. So we're going to have a deeper dive with an extended workshop on November 19th. And there's an early bird discount if you want to register for it now. So we hope if you like this content and you want to look a little deeper with it, that you will check it out. And that's for 2 professional learning hours. And as we get started, we know that you're all really busy in the chat right now, but always, click the chat button to ask any questions or make any comments. You can chat amongst yourselves. Make sure that you have the setting to share with everyone. We as the panelists are not allowed to chat with you. We're kind of afraid to change that setting during the middle of a big webinar. So if you have something to share with us, we can respond verbally if we're able to. So you're going to see some icons today on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. So the first is for the Padlet. All of our resources there will remain live. We'll keep this link open for you so you can take them and share them. We're going to have a lot of discussions using the chat. We'll have a couple of polls for you to take part in to keep this as interactive as we can. And then there will be a video later on in the session. So as I mentioned, we have a Padlet. To get to it, you would click where it says on the first row, explore the Padlet. And we're going to model this for you in just a bit, how you can find all of the materials. So our objectives for today, we have 3 of them, as you can see. We are going to explain the importance of formative assessment and collecting evidence of multilingual learners learning and monitoring their progress. We'll discuss a 4-step formative assessment process to support students' language development and content learning. And then we'll explore real-world examples of how one educator, that would be Tan, implements formative assessment practices to effectively support ML's language development and content learning. And as I mentioned, the content, a lot of our content from this presentation comes from our book that Megan and I co-authored together with Dr. Sydney Snyder, Unlocking Multilingual Learners' Potential. And we're really drawing a lot from Chapter 9 on formative assessment. And we want to give a special shout out to Tan, who contributed to that chapter. So if you have this book, you can check out some of his content in Chapter 9 on co-planning, from co-planning individual lessons to co-planning formative assessments to be used throughout a unit of study. And Tan is also working on a new book we just heard about. So you can maybe share a little bit about that too. So speaking of books, we'd like to give you all who are here today the opportunity to win a book. And Megan's gonna show you how to do that next. And you can look in the chat to click on this link, and Megan will share some info about that.
All right, so when you click on that link through the chat, it will take you to this screen, and you're able to just click in to this blue text to open up the Padlet. And like Diane said, that's a nice Padlet of resources that you can return to. And then here you can click Enter to Win, and you just fill out this form. And then at the end of this session today, we'll be announcing a winner.
Yep. So we hope you'll stay with us through the end of the session when we do announce the winner, but we'll have a couple of backups too that get randomly generated. So as you're doing that, we just want to make sure that we are all kind of on the same page about the students we're talking about, the students we love, multilingual learners. So just we know that different states and provinces in Canada use different terminology. So we have our group of all students, that's everybody. Multilingual learners are those students whose parents or caregivers indicate that there's a language in addition to or other than English spoken in the home. They may or may not qualify for English language development services or ESL services. And then within that smaller group, we refer to these students as emergent multilingual learners who do need some specific language support. In looking at our numbers of students, emergent multilingual learners are around 10% of the school-age population in the US, but multilingual learners are about 23% and growing, so about a quarter of our population nationwide. So just to make sure we're all using the same terminology. So many of you already shared your name and role in the chat, but if you haven't done so already, please take a minute to do that. But also tell us what you're hoping to learn today from this session. So definitely share that info with us in the chat. You can tell you're thinking because nothing has come through yet. You're thinking about what you want to learn. I really am looking forward to the real world examples from Tan's classroom. Carrie wants to learn anything Tan teaches. Better strategies for formative assessment and how to use them. Yeah, we really feel like this piece, formative assessment, sometimes gets left out or is kind of rushed through in the teaching and learning cycle. So we wanted to give it a special shout out, especially at this time during the school year. We all thought it warrants a much closer look. And a lot of comments are coming in. So we will make sure we will take a look at all of these. Great. So I am now going to turn it over to Megan.
Great, thank you, Diane. So now we are going to jump into our first objective, which is around explaining the importance of formative assessment in collecting evidence of ML's learning and monitoring their progress. So to get started, I'd like to hear from you all in the chat. If you could share how you define formative assessment. So I have some sentence stems here for you on the screen. Formative assessment is, I find it helpful because, I find it challenging because. Love to hear a little bit from you. All right, so I'm seeing lots of things roll into the chat. monitoring ongoing progress. I find it helpful because it allows me to see what students need next. Great. Thank you all so much for sharing. Lots of good ideas here are rolling in the chat. It's hard to read them all as they come in this quickly with over 200 people here. But I see you're sharing how you find it helpful and challenging. I'm really hoping that in this session that we're able to share some potential solutions to the challenges that you're raising. I see that Melissa just shared that it's challenging for her to use formative assessment on a daily basis because they don't give grades in her classes. And other people are raising that it's challenging because they have so many students and they bounce from class to class. So as we begin to talk about formative assessment here, we hope to share some strategies that will be potential solutions to some of these challenges that you're raising. So in her book, Assessing Multilingual Learners, Bridges to Empowerment, Margot Gottlieb frames assessment into these three broad categories: assessment as, for, and of learning. So assessment as learning really emphasizes students as active participants in their own learning, with a focus on developing their metacognitive, metacultural, and metalinguistic awareness. And so when we talk about assessment as learning, that's a form of formative assessment. An example would be if you have students create their own language development goals, and then they come back to those and reflect on their growth over time. Assessment for learning really embraces the role of teachers in making instructional decisions based on classroom data that they gather on an ongoing basis. So assessment for learning is a form of formative assessment. And an example of this would be a teacher using an observation checklist to take notes on students' academic language use and then adjusting their instruction based on those notes, those observations that they take. And then assessment of learning, it's about generating data for summative purposes, right? So assessment of learning really is summative assessment. An example of this would be our annual English language proficiency tests, such as Access for ELLs. And so we kind of wanted to frame assessment like this for you all and note that we're focusing in on assessment as and for learning, both types of formative assessment. Now here you see a definition of formative assessment, which is that is a planned ongoing process used by all students and teachers during learning and teaching to elicit and use evidence of student learning to improve student understanding of intended disciplinary learning outcomes and support students to become self-directed learners. So this really touches on that assessment as and for learning. And if you're interested in digging deeper into this definition, we have a link on the Padlet that really expands on this definition and this idea. And so I'd like to focus in first on what we know about multilingual learners and assessment. So when we look at assessment in a really broad sense for multilingual learners, we know that research tells us that summative assessments that are designed for native English speakers might not be as reliable and valid for our emergent multilingual learners. And data backs this up, right? So data from the nation's report card, so here in the US, that's the National Assessment of Educational Progress, shows that there are consistent score gaps that persist between emergent multilingual learners and their peers on math and reading assessments. However, if you continue to look at the data, we see that it shows that those former multilingual learners, so those MLs that have been reclassified and exited the ELD program by attaining English proficiency, they tend to really outperform all students, including native English speakers. And so this data is so exciting to see. It really highlights the value of teachers and students' hard work and the advantages that we see of multilingualism. And, really thinking about this data, it demonstrates that current summative assessment measures, they present issues of reliability and validity for multilingual learners. But if teachers, educators are designing assessments that really take multilingual learners' strengths into consideration, formative assessment holds a lot of promise as a way for us to really allow multilingual learners to demonstrate what they know and can do with both content and language. So I'd like to look at an assessment task. So this is an example of an elementary assessment task where a teacher is assessing students' understanding of word ending sounds. A student is shown this picture and asked to identify what other word has the same ending sound: tie, bow, tree, or pan. So I'm curious to hear from you all in the chat, looking at this assessment task, what might be problematic for multilingual learners in this task? What might stand in the way of them demonstrating what they know?
And Megan, I noticed you said bow. That could also be bow, right?
It could be bow, yes.
So I was just thinking, I've seen this so many times. Yeah.
And so I see pronunciation coming in, background knowledge, spelling patterns. They might not be able to read those words just yet. Vocabulary knowledge. Right? So this assessment, just like you all are saying, it really assumes that the student's going to see this picture and know that it's called a bee in English. And so to demonstrate their understanding of word ending sounds, the student would have to know what a bee is and how to say it in English, and then make the connection to the corresponding word with the same ending sound. So something as simple as this, an assumption of background knowledge, can really prevent an ML from demonstrating their content understanding. And I wanted to share this example as part of really defining validity. So I've mentioned the term validity a couple of times. When we say validity, we're talking about the extent to which an assessment accurately measures what it's intended to measure, right? And this is especially important for our multilingual learners because language proficiency, it can interfere with how we measure content knowledge. And in Unlocking Multilingual Learners' Potential, we outline 6 specific validity considerations for multilingual learners. So when we're designing assessment tasks, really thinking about these considerations. So the assessment instructions, are they clear and easy to understand for students? The format and use of technology. So does the assessment have a familiar format and technology that students have utilized before? Is it linguistically accessible? Is there a reduced linguistic load for both the content and the assessment instructions? And that cultural bias piece. So is the content accessible to all the students in the classroom? Does it include shared experiences that all the students can relate to? For the scoring piece, is only the construct that's being assessed being scored? So are we really grading what is meant to be tested, right? And then scaffolds. So does the assessment contain appropriate supports for multilingual learners at all levels of English proficiency to really demonstrate their content knowledge and their skills? It's important here with the scaffolding piece to remember that the assessment doesn't need to look the same for all students. So as you think about those validity considerations, I'm curious which one you feel is the most important when assessing multilingual learners in your context. So we're going to pull up a poll here. I'm curious, is it assessment instructions, format and use of technology? Let's see, you should see that popping up on your screen. What sticks out to you?
And as you're voting, I know there's a question. We're not allowed to, as panelists, we can't chat with participants because of a setting. Stanley asked if there will be a recording. Yes, there will be a recording.
Great, thank you, Diane.
What % of people have voted?
So I can't see that. So
Oh, you can't see.
yeah.
Yeah.
Here, it just popped up on my screen. Okay, this is always so interesting when we do this poll because it's different every time we do it. So here, 63% of you are really identifying the linguistic accessibility piece, followed by scaffolds and then cultural bias. Excellent, thank you guys. Now I want to touch on the benefits of formative assessment for multilingual learners. So I hinted at this, talked a little bit about it a few slides back, but assessment of multilingual learners, it's more complex than assessing non-multilingual learners because our MLs are developing both content knowledge and English language skills simultaneously, right? So formative assessment for multilingual learners is really an opportunity for teachers to collect evidence on students' progress in both their content knowledge and language development, and then make immediate instructional decisions based on that data, based on that evidence that they collect. And then in addition to that, formative assessment has the benefit of fostering students' engagement with their own learning and acquisition of language through self and peer assessment and personal goal setting. So that's that assessment as learning piece that we referenced in the beginning. All right, so I'm going to ask you to share one more thing in the chat here. How do you currently use formative assessment for MLs in your context? And are there any particular formative assessment tools that you use specifically for multilingual learners? Okay, Veronica uses stoplights. So when we use that in professional learning, it's, what we're going to stop doing, continue doing, and start doing. Exit slips, checklists, goal setting, anecdotal notes. I love it. I see Sherry has students set their own goals. All right. Thank you all so much for sharing. Continue sharing. We can always learn so much from each other. And now I'm going to pass it on to Diane for our next section.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. So thanks, and Megan, of course, for giving us that piece about the importance of formative assessment for multilingual learners. So now we're going to move into talking about and sharing an example of a 4-step formative assessment process for students. And so you'll see, so we adapted this model and we have 4 steps. So the first is to articulate the construct being taught and assessed. So, oops. The second, I need to move a couple things on my screen, is to collect our evidence. And we're going to go into each of these areas in a bit more detail next. Interpreting the evidence and how do we use the assessment data? What do we use it for? The whole purpose is to plan and adapt our instruction based on what we learned. So let's look at step 1, and then we're going to apply this to a case study, and you'll be able to give some input and draw from your repertoire as well. So in our first step, we're articulating the construct being taught and assessed. So you have to think about, what we're teaching, what's the role of language and or content in the lesson or the unit? What success criteria have you developed and defined and shared with students? And as Megan mentioned, how have you made the assessment valid? There is no perfectly valid assessment, but what steps have you taken to make it as valid as you can for multilingual learners? So in our second step, we're collecting the evidence of their learning. So we have to think about what task you're giving them and how language dependent that needs to be. And so you can use tasks that are less language dependent, like visual or performance tasks, if your goal is assessing content knowledge. But then if you're thinking about, assessing other kinds of knowledge or learning, we want you to consider using scaffolded or open-ended tasks that allow students at different levels of English language proficiency to really demonstrate what they know and can do. And also think about tasks that have multiple strategies to assess learning. So you could have a student write and draw and explain as well. So a lot to think about as you're collecting evidence. And these are probably things you're already doing already, but you get a nice visual to go along with what you're doing. So the next step is to interpret the evidence. So think back to the construct being assessed, and then think about the tools that you can use to analyze the language and or content depending on the focus of your assessment. So rubrics, checklists, conferring notes, rating scales, and many of you already shared exit slips, stoplights, so things that you've already shared in the chat. And then the fourth step is using all of this data you've collected. What do you do now? So you're using the data to plan for instruction and to change your instruction and adapt it. So first of all, think about what you learned. With your formative assessment, which students met the criteria for learning, which students might need some further instruction based on your data, and then in what areas do they need further instruction, and so if you're reteaching, what new strategies or tools can you use if students need it? And then decide when you might implement the data and adjust instruction. And this step is very important in the process because all of this analysis of data, it's not going to help us unless we implement what we learned. So we kind of have to put ourselves out there and be a little vulnerable as educators during this process, like, oh, they didn't quite learn what I was hoping for. So what can this data tell us objectively about how to plan for instruction? So one more poll for you, making sure that you are still awake and with us. Tan, you're hopefully still awake. We know it's getting even later for you. So which of the 4 steps do you feel the most confident in the formative assessment process? And it just popped up for me. So the first step, articulating the construct being taught. Second step, collecting the evidence. Third step, interpreting the evidence. And fourth step, using the assessment data to plan for ongoing instruction. So we'll give you like maybe 30 more seconds to vote because I can't tell how many of you have voted. You're probably thinking really hard about this. Which do you feel the most confident with? And I think we can go ahead and stop the poll and share the results. And I'm interested to see, oh, you feel the most confident with the fourth step, using the data to plan for ongoing instruction. That's great. So it looks like, across the board, the area that you might need more help with is actually interpreting the evidence. And so you'll see how this plays out in a case study next. So here is our case study. We have 3 characters. Our first character in our study of formative assessment in action is Miss Brody. She's an English language development or ELD teacher. Miss Cortez is a 4th grade content teacher. They collaborate and co-teach a science class weekly, and they want to gather information on their emergent ML's writing skills at the word, phrase, sentence, and discourse levels to help inform their instructional planning. So in this case, we're going to look at one kiddo, this emergent ML, whose name is Kong. He's a Mandarin speaker, and he's at a high beginning to low intermediate level of English language proficiency. So our process and action. So our first step, right? They're articulating the construct being taught. So our teachers, they decided to develop a formative assessment rubric that captures their students' acquisition of academic language at the word, phrase, sentence, and discourse levels. So you can see that here. We've also linked to this on the Padlet for you. So they developed this rubric specific to their emergent ML's level of proficiency, which are high beginning, low intermediate, and high intermediate. So in doing this, they looked at the WIDA writing rubric in grades 1 to 12, and they made a version for grade 4. So this is a wonderful example of collaboration. And so they wanted to look at how well their emergent MLs were acquiring academic language through writing through a unit on Roadrunners, a science unit. So in this, for this formative assessment, they're looking at language, not the content about Roadrunners. So let's look next. What happened? Oops, I'll click it again. Here we go. So we're keeping, thinking about step 2 now. They're collecting evidence. So here is what Kong wrote. So he completed an open-ended task to describe how roadrunners are different from other birds as part of his science unit. So he was encouraged to look at a word wall in his classroom and brainstorm a draft of the writing rubric using a graphic organizer. Brainstorm a draft of his writing. So in the third step, so you can see what he wrote. So step 3, this is where we might want to focus a little more based on what you said in the poll, is interpreting the evidence. So in this scenario, our teachers, Ms. Brody and Ms. Cortez, they're collaboratively analyzing Kong's work using the rubric that they developed. So they looked at the strengths at the word, phrase, sentence, and discourse levels. So you can see several selected observations that they made. So I love how their focus is on the strengths. So you're seeing at each of the levels of academic language what the student is doing. So using general content vocabulary, they're repeating a comparative structure to contrast roadrunners and other birds. And then in terms of discourse, this is comprehensible and it shows an attempt to be organized. And so, there's some errors, but we get what Kong is trying to say, right? I'm sure you can relate to that. And so step 4, they're then using the data to plan next steps. So again, our lovely teachers are collaborating to use this data about his writing and how he's using academic language to plan for their next steps in instruction. And so they notice that his writing repeats a comparative structure, but what does that tell us and what can we do next? So we see that Kong, he might be ready to use more sentence structures for comparison to widen his repertoire. And so Ms. Brody, the ELD teacher, is going to introduce some more comparative sentence structures in a mini lesson, and she's going to use an anchor chart. So they're looking, they decided to kind of zero in on the sentence level. So that was very quick. We want to share a tool with you that you can use. And this is our Multilingual Learner Formative Assessment Checklist. It's a great tool that a lot of teachers have shared with us that they use in planning for formative assessment for multilingual learners. So, we want to give you just a minute to look at this and think about, you can find it in the chat, in the Padlet as well, if you want to open it up. Hopefully you can see it enough on your screen. And think about, how could you maybe use this tool in your context? How could you use it, in your current role? And just share in the chat. Or maybe you're like, I don't think I can use it in my context, but if not, why not? Or what might you adapt? Maybe you don't want to use all 10 criteria. That might be a bit much if you're kind of in the initial phase of collaborating with a teacher. So how could you use it? And then we're going to turn it over to Tan. But we won't do that until you share. So we need to hear from you. Yeah, great. So I see a couple of comments, providing PD to schools. And that's your next topic, assessing language development. Great. So Tracy, use this and share it. So everything on the Padlet is there for you to use and share in your own turnaround training that you might give. Yeah, Catherine said PLCs. Yeah, it's an external reference and not personal. And Barb, that's a really important point. When we're collaborating, sometimes we take things personally, right? But this is a good objective checklist. Have you done these things? Yes or no? And if not, what can you work on in the future? Wonderful. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tan.
Thank you. I'm just progressing. Hi, everybody. So when Diane and Megan asked me to come, I kind of a little bit fainted. And then I woke up and I said yes to their email. And they asked me specifically to look at formative assessment in writing. While this is focused on writing, my examples of writing, it's applicable to any content area. So this is a picture of me when I was in 9th grade. I know you can't judge the clothing choices that my mother picked out for me still in 9th grade. When I was no longer an ESL student, I exited ESL in the beginning of 5th grade. And yet my teaching experience has been like this. My learning experience from 5th all the way to university was this. The teacher would assign a writing task. Then the student would work on the essay and I would work on the essay for 3 weeks. And then guess what happened? We would submit the essay and can you guess what happened next? Of course, we wouldn't see it for 2 weeks, more like 2 months. And then we would get the grade back. And then I was expected to go and improve the next time the assessment was given again. Can you explain in the group chat why this approach is well-intentioned but really problematic for a cute multilingual learner like me? Elizabeth, hello, buenos dias. Yes, no feedback, feedback. Yes, there's zero formative assessment. There's no instruction as well. And maybe this is why I didn't do so well on the SAT or the ACT. We'll get to there later. And then let me rewind back. And so that was the experience in my middle school and high school and actually university experience. I was assigned tasks and never instructed on how to do them. But now that I work with elementary schools, I was an elementary school teacher for 2 years. And then I also consult with school districts in the elementary school programs. And I often see this much better program. This is me in first year in kindergarten. I love this so much. I went twice. And this is what teachers do. They go, okay, I'm gonna have a mini lesson. We're gonna look at bees. For example, Megan just talked about bees or Kong. Let's talk about Kong. Yeah. And then the teacher would say, here's a mentor text. Let's do a little workshop on it, maybe about description. And then the teacher would go, great, now I did it together with you. Now you go do it in your text. It was basically like, I modeled all the steps, now you do it. Can you type in the group chat? This is much better than my 9th grade experience, but why is this problematic as well? Yes, even after 1 week, students forgot what they're doing. 5 weeks is pretty extreme. Yes, there's no guided practice. Hello, Sherry. Thank you. There's no guided writing. It's kind of like you read my instructions. I mean, did you get a sneak preview? I'm so impressed. So now we look at this. I recommend that you think about assessing students formatively using this loop that Beth and I call the input-output loop. This is part of our new book, but when we work with multilinguals, that's like the biggest thing. Can they get input? Because if there's no input, there's no output. But can we make it like small little inputs and small little outputs? Notice I already gave you 2 chances for output because I gave you 2 inputs. Let's see how many times you can get that as well during the assessment. So the best way that I could show this to you visually is through this video. I'm a badminton coach, a really poor one. But watch this, and it's going to be in Korean. We're going to turn off the sound so that I can narrate for you. And you're going to watch how the coach teaches the student, and type in the group chat, what do you notice about their interaction? So here is I'm going to narrate. Here's a little bit of input. He's teaching, and then the student is outputting. 1 second. And he's stepping back to observe the output. Then he's like, oh, let me correct. Let me provide more feedback, input. He's showing, here's how the hand should be positioned. Here's how the racket should be held. He's providing immediate feedback. And then, oh, Caitlin, you just said exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, and then watch, now he's gonna go, here's the output. Now he steps back again. The student is outputting. He's now right back inputting. Okay, so what do you notice about the feedback? Very hands-on, absolutely, Carol. Immediate, micro. That's the main thing. The feedback is minute and like minute and very specific. Let's move on. So that's the visual metaphor I want to share with you when we're working with multilinguals and formative feedback. Let me go to the next page. Great. The biggest thing I want to take away with my 17 years or 18 years of teaching experience, I realized this. We have to move away from feedback to read my feedback to let's co-create the responses together. And that's where the feedback will come from. This can work in science, in math. I know there are a few math teachers here. Hello. This can work in math in every single subject area. I'm going to be focusing on first one, the science one in a second. And this is what we do. Focus on the prompting during the co-creating. And this comes from the teaching learning cycle, so I want to cite that as well. So this is research back. This is literally 3 weeks ago, this is what my students did. The science teacher decided, the unit was on mass and force. And the teacher wanted students to analyze a set of data. This is 7th grade, like this is for real, y'all. Here's the data that he set out. During my collaboration with teachers, the teachers identified that these are this is the actual classroom where I'm going to be teaching in like 4 hours. And we co-created the scaffold for students. And I said, I don't know how to write an analysis paragraph for a graph. Can you show me how to do that? I listened to them and I wrote down every single part. There's an introduction, there's addressing the hypothesis, evidence, there's anomalies, there's explanation. And then this is what I did during the collaboration. I co-created their sentence paragraph frames from what they said. And I took out all the content area. For example, for the introduction sentence, I said, the purpose of this experiment was to explore the relationship between X and the Y variable. Notice we didn't finish, we didn't give everything. The students have to fill out still things that are related. Now it's time. All students got this. The teacher liked it. This is the power of collaboration. When you teach students how to sound like scientists, your science teachers will like that. And they'll say, maybe I should give this to everybody. And they did. So that was a wonderful moment. Danae is one of my students on my roster. And this is a literally screenshot from her example. So I wrote, so the purpose of the experiment was to explore the relationship between, and I said, Danae, what's the independent variable? What's the thing we're changing? And she said, oh, the mass. And I wrote down mass and she said, perfect, let's move to the next part. And she looked at the experiment and said, the force. And then she wrote the sentence. The purpose of the experiment was to explore the relationship between the mass and the force. And we went to, perfect, let's move to the next part. And we said, let's look at the hypothesis. The hypothesis was ... And we said, what was the hypothesis? Can you rewrite your hypothesis? And so this is our process. Instead of saying, yes, good pat on the job, Tan and his co-colleagues, we go and we made our I work with students, my formative assessment, I pulled students together, a very small group of students, and then I co-created with them. That's the part of it. Now, I know what you're saying. Wait, Tan, did you just do their practice for them? And then where's the independent practice? And I very quickly did this. I said, AI, my new boyfriend, hey, can you please create me a new data table so that Danae can actually practice on her own? And then she started writing this. She had the sentence paragraph frame. I just walked away now. And I came back and I checked, and this is what she said. The purpose of the experiment was to explore the relationship between mass and the force. Oh, she just got that from the co-work that we did together. Then this is the beginning of her next sentence. The hypothesis was supported because. So she's looking at the paragraph frame and she's writing it. And unfortunately, the bell had rung at that time. And so we had to end, and I wasn't able to check the rest of it. But she's now using the paragraph frame that we co-filled in together to work on her own. So before I go to strategy 2, can you type in the group chat, what do you notice about this main strategy of co-creating with students instead of assigning to students? And Diane or Megan, if you see responses, can you read the responses for me? Thank you.
So I see someone said it builds confidence. Actually, I've seen that a couple times. Ownership.
Less anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
It's true teaching. You're in it together.
Daniela said it makes the students feel like they are a part of their own learning and builds their self-esteem.
Yeah, so because both you and Diane talked about teachers who said the feeling of it. We know that when students and multilingual learners feel confident at school, they will be more engaged. And that's what we're doing. We're not making the assessment easier. We're giving them the skills to engage with the task, right? So let's move to strategy number 2. So then we're moving from science and we're moving to English a little bit. And the strategy number 2 is co-editing responses with students. So let's look at a book that I'm currently reading in one of my units is from Lisa Phipps. It's a book called Starfish. It's a beautiful book. It's about a girl who is body shamed by her mother. It's a fabulous book. It's chills. You will love it. Let me read you the first text very quickly. Just for a while, I stepped down into the pool. The water is bath water warm, but feels cool compared to the blistering hot air. It takes place in Houston. Hello to the colleague in Houston, by the way. Kick, glide, stroke, glide, side to side and back again. Dive under the surface, soar to the top, arch my back, flip, flop. As soon as I slip into the pool, I am weightless and limitless just for a while. That's the first part. I read the text with them, and then I wanted them to process the segment of text. And this is what I asked my students. This is for real, y'all. This is like a screenshot from my class. Hello. In one sentence, summarize the feeling of being in the pool for the main character. And I asked my students to write a sentence that starts with a verb, a gerund, and spew, which stands for a verbal phrase such as specifically, particularly, especially, which. And then this is my actual students' responses. This is in the 4th unit, so don't be surprised, like these are actual students. Okay, so Visel said, going into the pool, comma, especially during the hot day, comma, make the main character feel very good. Do you see? Grammatically incorrect, but conceptually gets it. And they're writing a really complex sentence. This is Samnang and Tita. They're working as a double team. Being in the pool, especially when the weather hot, feel very free for the main character. And Chuck and Sojin, Korean and Chinese together. Swimming in the pool, comma, especially when it is hot, made the character, I can't see the next, hot, comfortable, whatever. Okay, so let's practice this. I'm just going to show you the segment of what I did. We give input. I'm going to read a text, and I want you to give me a little bit output. I'll show you what to do. So let's read the next chapter. Back into class. Name calling. Eliana Elizabeth Montgomery Hofstede. That's my name. But my bestie, Viv, and my parents all call me Ellie or Elle. But most people call me Splash, or some synonym for whale. Cannonball into the pool, drenching everyone, and wear a whale swimsuit to your under-the-sea birthday party when you're a chubby kid who grows up to be a fat tween, and no one will ever let you live it down, ever. Okay, class, I want you to explain why they call Ellie a whale. Please use a sentence structure because, add some detail, comma, and then give me a noun, verb, detail sentence for that. Because, dot, 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 noun, verb, detail. You can start with Ellie, Eliana, or she. Okay. And Diana, can you read the responses this time? Let's see the creative sentences teachers will write.
All right, so they are doing this right now.
They sure are.
Yeah. See when the first brave one comes through in the chat. They're still thinking. So Tan, why did you choose this book as their?
Yes, because my students are phase 3, phase 2-3 WIDA, and they can read, this is a free-verse novel, so the text is limited. So we can focus on, instead of a chapter, we focus on one quote-unquote chapter. There's only 3, 4, 5 lines, or one paragraph.
Okay. So we have some responses because Ellie is chubby, because she is a chubby girl, Because Ellie was overweight, others responded with cruelty. Because Ellie likes the pool, Anna asked you to explain NVD again.
Noun verb detail. Instead of saying subject verb agreement, a subject verb object, when kids translate the word subject, they don't know what that means. But when I say noun, they do.
Ah, great.
Good.
Because she is wearing a whale swimsuit, because she makes big splashes in the water. Yeah, lots of responses coming in. Do you want to hear?
Yes, and
Or is that a
no,
good
this is perfect. I love how some people wrote because Ellie swims well, and that's the part of the sentence, but I love how Carol wrote like, because they call Ellie a whale, comma, she, noun, feels like her weight is something that she can't live down. Excellent. And look at this another sentence. I'm going to show you one more. This is from Charlie. Deborah, I'm sorry. Because she's drenched everyone by cannonballing. What a great sentence, comma. Ellie is constantly reminded of her weight. Look at how Deborah, but also Caroline started the sentence the same with the word because, but look at how their ending sentence is different. I just taught sentence variety very quickly. Fabulous. Okay, so now I know what so this is the process. We start off with reading a segment of text. It can be a paragraph. Input. I immediately ask students for output. Read the prompt for that segment of text. Students then work in small groups, immediately reading, writing, speaking, listening to answer that question. And then I co-edit. I'm going to show you co-editing in like 20, 30 seconds. Okay? But I know when I share this process in my notebook, teachers will say, well, boo, that's cute. You got like 4 kids, but I got like 3,400 kids in a classroom. If you have 32 students, this is what I would do. I would first group students into 8 groups of 4, and each group will give one response. And I'm giving group feedback there. Then as students are familiar with the writing concept, we move into pairs, and I'm giving feedback with some of the pairs. And finally, individually. So this is very gradual. The feedback is first as a group, then from group to pairs, then from pairs to individuals. Okay. So let me show you the co-editing, which is my last example of giving formative feedback live to students and not being like taking homework home and like grading. So we read this other text at the beginning of the year, George Take. It's called "They Called Us Enemy." Enemy. It's about the Japanese internment camp, and this is one segment of text. We read 151 to 157, and I decided to chop that. And this is for real for homework. So my instruction was describe the shocking bad news that people in the camps received using a sentence, comma, and, or a sentence, comma, but, compound sentences. Okay. And this is actual Viso's example. Many places in Japanese got bombed, and many people in the internment camp, they was worried about their family in Japanese. Conceptually correct, grammatically not. Let me do this. Ready? Get ready to type. I'm going to show you co-editing live, and you give me the answers. Ready? Perfect, Viso. I liked how you said many place. When you see the word many, what should we do with place, everybody? Type in the group chat. Yes, you got it, places. So many places in Japanese. Oh, perfect. Japanese is the people, but we're looking for the place. Can you type the word? What should we write in many places in Japan? You got it. Got bombed. I love how Visa put the comma. Fabulous. The idea is over. And many people in the internment camp. Oh, they was? Ah, we don't need the word they, so let's just read this. Many people in the internment camp, not was, because people is more than one. Tan was, Megan was, Diane was, but if it's they, people, it would be, you got it, were. So many people in the internment camp were worried about their family in Japanese. Japanese is people, so what should we use with, you got it, Japan. And the sentence is over. What should we put at the end of a sentence, y'all? You got it, Japan.com. Hello, this is great. Did I say Japan.com? Oh my goodness, Amazon should buy that up. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Let me give you practice now. Okay, actually, we'll stop because basically we got the practice. This is that practice. Can you type in the group chat and share with us, what did you notice about co-editing a response? This can be done in math, in science, in social studies, in arts, and anything that we're teaching students to do a skill, we can co-edit a response with them. And Megan, would you be able to read responses this time?
Absolutely. So I'm seeing people say that it's real time, immediate feedback, it's low risk for students.
Keep going,
Yeah,
yes.
engagement, so engaging and empowering this way, very supportive, direct instruction, uses all language domains.
Yes, I want to go back to that low risk part. I know when I share this, teachers like, Ty, that you're making kids feel stressful. And I'm saying, this is the phrase that I use now. I say, oh, here's an opportunity to. So it's not, you didn't do this right. It's like, oh, Viso, yes, you use the word many and place. Here's an opportunity to add what to the word place? S. And so really I'm affirming students, and students are actually growing. That's how my students move from WIDA phase 3 to 4 or 4 to 5, because the co-editing, my students often write a singular, like instead of places, they write place. But everybody does that. But if I model and I use just Viso's one example, then everybody sees. And just a mental note for co-editing, I don't go to Viso again until I go to everyone else in the class and I've co-edited everyone else's response. Because Viso will be like, boo, why you on me? And that is how we do it. So I gave you 3 examples. Again, small group instruction, co-producing with them, and then co-editing responses with students, right? So I will then pass the time back to Diane and Megan.
Oops. Thank you. I'm just forwarding through. So we have a couple of minutes to close, and thank you so much to Tan. A great example, so authentic. I love seeing all of that, and I can tell everybody else did here as well. We're going to do a very quick reflection. Think about all you're learning from this webinar today. So much theory and real world application. In the chat, share one word or a short phrase to summarize your key takeaway related to formative assessments for MLs. So yeah, one word or phrase: supportive, scaffolding, feedback, collaborate, timely feedback, co-editing, noticing, immediate, helpful, doable. A lot. Thank you. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. So in the interest of time, we had 3 objectives. We hope we met them all. So just to give a little more info, if you like the session, you want to go into the topic deeper, you want a couple of PD hours, we are having on November 19th, in about a month-ish, a 2-hour session where we're going more in depth. And I know we're sharing a link to that in the chat. If you have any questions, please email one or all of us, and all of our emails are here. But thank you again so much for attending and for all of your participation and for your passion for teaching multilingual learners. Thank you.